because they're traveling so much, maybe their relationship with their wife is not that good. You've heard of infidelity, right? Where sales reps who maybe travel to other countries, and we like to joke and say that, yeah, they have girlfriend in every country they travel to. So that sort of things. And I ask myself, do I want that? Or rather, do I want to put myself in that situation?
Hello everyone, today I'm really excited because I have a special guest here with me. His name is Asher. So Asher used to be in the same line of work as me. He worked in tech sales, but subsequently he made a very bold move before he turned 30 years old to leave the industry and also to explore new opportunities and setting up his own ventures. So given that there are many out there who are dealing with career transitions, burnout, I thought it would be a great idea for us to interview Asher to understand a bit more about his story and see if there's anything we can learn that could be helpful for you. Maybe Asher, you could want to introduce a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I'll just do a quick introduction. So, of course, my name is Asher. Right now, I'm founded my own company called Revenue Journey. Simply put it, we are a software consultancy, right? We consult on a very particular product, which is clay.com, and we also implement for our clients. So that's pretty much what I've been doing now. But prior to starting my own company, I spent about 5 years in corporate, just like you said, in tech sales, right? So I went all the way from sales development representative to account executive, but today running my own company.
All right, very exciting. And maybe if I can understand a bit more about your background before we go into how you go about making this decision about starting your own thing. So actually I read about your background. I feel that it's one of the most interesting stories. Would you be able to walk us through your journey into maybe perhaps your childhood all the way to secondary school? And I feel that this point is important to cover because I think it also shapes your perspective on life.
Yeah, definitely. I think my sort of early days of growing up definitely shaped a bit of my character now. So generally speaking, I have 3 siblings, right? So we grew up in a family of 4 kids. My parents, they didn't really have, they pretty much worked odd jobs all their life, right? So it was not your typical office work. It was maybe like your cleaners, or they were doing very odd jobs. Could be, your typical bread shop. They have worked at fast food restaurants before. So growing up, that was how we sort of lived, right? It was like day to day. And I would say in terms of daily courage, financial, the government helped us quite a bit, right? So that wasn't too much of an issue. But one of the key things that I would say have a great impact on my life was probably when I was 15 years old. So when I was 15 years old, that was secondary 3. I was in secondary 3 express. So now we don't have express and normal academic, right? But that was when I was secondary 3 express. For some reason, even right now, things are quite blurry. But that was the year where I started to play truant. So I was not going to school quite often. I don't know why. It could be maybe because the teachers wasn't people that I really wanted to follow. Maybe I didn't really enjoy the day-to-day. All I could remember was by the end of the year, my attendance was slightly less than 50%. And obviously when you are less than 50% to school, it also means that my grades will take some hit, right? At the end of secondary 3, what happened was that I went through all the exams. The form teacher actually came to me and said, "Hey Asher, your grades are not good enough to go to secondary 4 express." Yeah. So what happened was they gave me 2 choices. Either number 1, I went to secondary 4 normal academic, which means I have to go to secondary 5, right? Or I have to actually stay in secondary 3 express, so retain. So that was the 2 options. Regardless, you had to spend extra year in school. And I don't know what got over me during that period. Maybe because I was young, I didn't know any better. That was when I told my parents, okay, let's quit lah. Let's just quit. So
You mean quit school?
Quit school, yeah. So actually at the age of 15, I actually left my secondary school, I quit. Again, things are a little bit blurry. I'm not sure what came first, but all I knew was that there was a period after I quit, I actually went to do odd jobs, right? Giving flyers, again, working in the same fast food restaurants as my parents, because I just wanted to say, okay, I'll just go out and earn money. I don't really need education.
You did quite a wide variety of odd jobs. Can you tell me a bit more about the type of odd jobs that you were doing at 15 years old?
So 15 years old would be quite straightforward. Again, giving out flyers, that's one. Either in person or you're giving out flyers to the different mailboxes, right? Secondly is selling ice cream. So your very typical things that don't really need education. Working at fast food restaurant. For me, I would say one of my worst traits back then was, and I think even up till now, is that I get bored quite easily.
Okay.
It means that a lot of these jobs, maybe I do 2 weeks, 1 week, I'll just move on to the next thing because it's not stimulating for me, right? But that period of time when I was working, even that short 2 months, it was really hard because you're working long hours and your pay or your salary pretty much stays the same, right? Because these are just labor or physical jobs. Technically speaking, anyone could do it as long as they're physically and able-bodied. And that became a situation where I started to think, wait, do I want to do this for the rest of my life? So I'm 15 years old. And what happened during that period was there was this private school, City College, I'm not sure if they're still around, that happened to have 1-year programs, 2-year programs, right? And because of my experience doing those physical jobs, I decided, yeah, I don't really want to do this for the rest of my life. Let me try to get back into education. So that was when I applied into City College and I convinced my parents back then, right, to say, hey, can you send me to this private school? Which, by the way, was quite expensive. If I recall correctly, the yearly school fees for 1 year was probably around 7,000 to 10,000. And this was almost 10, 15 years ago. And for my parents, obviously, they didn't have the money, right? But I think I was really quite thankful back then. My parents sort of knew that if they didn't give me this opportunity, they didn't help to provide the funds to even try to send me to private school, that probably would have been sort of the end of my... Yeah, I don't know how to describe it, but that would probably be... I'll probably just be working odd jobs all the way, right?
Your life would have turned out very differently from now.
Definitely would have turned out quite differently. But long story short, what happened was I did the exam, the entrance exam, and they said, yeah, actually it's good enough, you can go into our 1-year program. I picked 4 subjects, so L1, R4, right? Sorry, 5 subjects, L1, R4, so that's all you needed. So I knew for a fact, okay, I'm only going to go to Polytechnic. Well, when I graduated, I recall really clearly, my L1, R4 was probably around 24 points. And the sort of only Polytechnic or courses that I could go into was quite limited. But I was quite fortunate because it was during secondary school or during those schooling days, I kind of found an interest in technology, right? So I was taking phones and I was trying to, in the very early days, taking the phones, trying to install like Java applications and everything. And I said, okay, I like technology. So that was when I applied for mobile software development. That was the course in Republic Polytechnic. I went to it. I would say what really almost gave me a 180-degree change was really the first day. I went to Polytechnic the first day. I was working together with all these students, right? To me, it was almost like a fresh start because I could now work on things that, or study things that I feel like I enjoy. And it was completely new, right? I didn't have to study like chemistry, physics, all these things. Not really something I enjoyed.
Not forced to take subjects that you don't like, but rather you can focus on technology, which is your interest.
That was definitely my interest. So that was a fresh start for me. And I recall this very clearly because the first day I went into Polytechnic, I was walking to class. I remember telling myself that I've disappointed enough people because during the days when I was skipping school, not going to school, I had a lot of arguments with my parents, my mom especially. So I knew for a fact that, okay, I don't want to disappoint them anymore. And at the same time, I told myself this is a fresh start. Everything starts from zero. I'm not taking burdens or memories from my secondary school anymore. And I had this very strong motivation that from here on, I'm going to change things. And what happened during that 3 years was I studied really hard. I went to school every day. And Republic Poly also teach you how to present yourself a little bit better because you have a lot of presentations as part of your modules, right? So that was what happened. And at the end of 3 years, I managed to graduate. And I was also lucky to be named the Valedictorian, at least for my course, right? Which was a very small course, by the way.
Well, but it's amazing to be a valedictorian. How do they choose the valedictorian?
Number one, definitely grades. They look at the top 3 to top 5 people who got the grades in the course and in your own cohort. And from there, I recall that they have some kind of practice, right, where they'll invite all these top graduates and they say, okay, imagine right now you are the valedictorian. Here's an example of a speech, try to deliver it. I think what they were looking for was also people who could deliver something, not be too robotic. And I managed to sort of share those things, and could be maybe because I used to go to church, right? Could be also because that period in church you have a lot of people who can speak really well. So I sort of learned how to speak as well. And yeah, that led to me eventually being given the opportunity to share on stage as my speech, graduation speech, as the valedictorian. And from there, I said, okay, let's go to army, which every Singaporean man must do.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, 1 year, 10 months of our service. And after that, it was also during army, I started going to university to interview. And from there, information systems was what I studied in SMU. Because I wanted to study technology, but I also wanted to go to a university where they continue to teach you how to present yourself, because I feel that's really important in the workplace. And SMU's way of teaching is really, we teach you the concepts, everything, pretty much the same as every other university. But at the same time, we have a strong emphasis on being interactive, regardless it's in classes or maybe during presentations. And yeah, 3 years of university did pretty okay.
So subsequently, I think the journey was quite straightforward already. You went on to, start off as a sales development representative, and I think that's how we met as well.
Yeah.
And then subsequently, you managed to get into an account executive role and did that for a few years. You became an AE at 27 years old, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, 27 years old.
For many people, when they enter the working world, their life would be primarily revolving around their work and perhaps their significant other, families and all. But I felt that you were actually dabbling in a lot of things outside work itself. You started your own podcast. You were doing emceeing part-time. And you were also part of this new industry group that was organising networking events for the sector as well. So very, very active life. I'm sure you were taking part in a lot more things beyond this. Like, I think High Rocks was one of the activities. Different phases, right? Yeah. So maybe you can tell me a bit more about what was driving that. Because how come you are not the type who just go to work and then chill at home and you have so many other activities that's going on?
I may not be able to, good question by the way, I may not be able to answer why, but I can tell you the exact moment where I decided I want to start doing a lot of things.
Okay.
So knowing the context and background of how my family was, I would say we are in the lower income bracket, right? Definitely. Because I remember even when we were young, we always managed to get the financial assistance that was the best package. And normally best package means you are the lower income, right? So I grew up not having, I would say, a lot of money, but that's fine, right? Even up till now today, I don't think I need a lot of money to sort of enjoy life. My happiness comes from going to eat, my Four Fingers, my shilling, my typical stuff. So, but to me, money was always important. It was something which I feel could give me a certain level of control and freedom. But how much do I need? That's debatable, right? It really depends from person to person. For me, it's not too much. But all I remember was because when I went to university, I had to take my own loan. I had to pay things off, right? My parents told me very early on that if you were to go to university, you have to cover your own loans. You have to cover your own payment for schools. So when I went to university, that's actually when I started to do a lot of different other jobs as well. So I had a period where I was working as a trainer for kids to help them to do public speaking. I have a period where I was what you call a seminar trainer, where I go to different secondary schools, teach them memory skills, study skills. Really interesting jobs like this, because I think it plays to my strengths, right? Being able to present. That was also during the period in SMU I went to learn about emceeing. I went to take courses, joined the CCA in SMU. So obviously when I went out, I realized, well, this job, or rather this skill set, I can earn money with it. That's why I did emceeing. Okay. But throughout university, I was very focused on one thing, which was I wanted to graduate, and as soon as I graduated, within 6 months, pay off my school loans. Okay. Which was probably close to 40,000 in total across 4 years, right? I studied 3.5 years, so I managed to reduce one semester. So that was my singular goal. So how did that happen? That even in university, I recall I probably cleared about 50% because it was a mix of saving money during my NS days to working odd jobs and trying to pay off 50%, right? So I was fortunate. Before I graduated, I actually found a job as an SDR at Impact. That was my first company. And I recall probably around the 4th or 5th month of working, I managed to save enough, right? and I cleared off all my loans within 4 to 5 months of graduation. So 0 interest for me.
Wow, fantastic. Clear off within 6 months, less than that, 5 months, right?
Yes.
And then on top of that, 0 interest also.
So that was really what I wanted to do. I just wanted to have the feeling where I'm debt free. I just wanted to have the feeling where I don't owe anybody anything. Because I didn't want to be in debt, right? We grew up not having much, so I didn't like the feeling of not having money. But I would say right after I cleared my debt, that was also the moment where I started to think to myself, in university I had this singular goal. Even slightly after graduation, when I worked so hard, sometimes even on the weekends, it was for this singular goal to clear off my school debt. But the moment where I clear it off, yes, I'm happy, it feels like I accomplished a goal. But yet at the same time, I felt, maybe the word is lost. I felt like, okay, what's next? Just working? Obviously, I did that for a few months, right? I did that for a few more months, work, and I started to think to myself, okay, now I'm debt free. I have pretty good savings habit. What is something I really wanted to do? I didn't know at that moment, but I kind of knew that on a personal note, I wanted to live by myself. Yeah. Because I have 3 siblings, right? So growing up, 2 brothers, 1 older, 1 younger. I have 1 older sister. And obviously, we are in a 5-room flat growing up, so 3 bedrooms. Parents take 1 room. My sister took 1 room because she's the only girl. And I always grew up around 2 other brothers. Don't really have my own space. And that was when I said, okay, I wanted to have my own space, right?
You were sharing a room with your brother until what age?
Let's see, when I got my job, when I graduated 2021, so now it's 2025, 4 years ago, until 26.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so even my first year of working, I was still sharing my room with them. And it becomes very hard because if you recall also during COVID period, so working from home, it was just not a conducive environment to sort of work. So I go to office a lot, just because I want that environment.
Okay.
So back then, that was what happened. I said, okay, I want to live by myself. And I started to think, what does it take to live by myself? Logically, right? Because again, maybe it's from my mobile software development days. I think logically, well, how much do I need per month? And at the same time, what are the average prices out there? What's the most I'm willing to give? And I also ask myself, do I have at least 6 months of emergency funds? Just in case things happen, right? I always think about things quite logically. So that was me. Took me, I would say slightly near the end of my first role, which was maybe about 1.5 years into working. That was when I actually went ahead and ran a place, right? So I was also fortunate to be able to find 2 of my OCS friends back then who said they were also looking out for people, and 3 of us basically rented a place. We were also fortunate because that period, it was the COVID period. Many foreigners were looking to go back to their home country, and we got a place at a pretty good rate, right? 4-room flat. And I paid a reasonable amount. I think I was paying around 1,100 per month back then. But that was the first time I had my own space, my own room. And I was staying quite close to the city centre as well. And that moment probably unlocked a lot of ideas in my mind. Because now I have my own space, I can easily go somewhere, talk to people, have coffee. So yeah, that was probably the period where I dabbled into a lot of things. Yeah. And as you would know, one of the things I dabbled into was podcasts. I said, I like tech sales. I have coffee with so many people about tech sales. I have coffee with both sales leaders, individual salespeople. And I always thought to myself, just like what we are doing now, right? Like these conversations, we could turn it to podcasts that could be insights or things that people enjoy. And I said, okay, let me turn that into a podcast. So that was what started. And that period, I remember I just did a lot of different things because I was just figuring out what I wanted. That was when I started to understand more about myself. I realized that I'm someone that needs to be creative. I need to be someone that's constantly trying new things. If you try to put me in a box, I typically struggle with it. Because I will be constantly asking myself, why do we do this? If it's not working, why are you telling me to do this? If it's working, great, we'll continue to iterate and improve on it. But if it's not working, why do you force me to do that? And I think in sales that sometimes happens, right? Maybe because of quota and everything, and because of how I would say some sales leaders look at things. For example, they may say there's a quota that is X amount, 50,000 per a month, but nobody really has a plan to get there. Typically, it's being pushed down from the headquarters in maybe US, London, all the way down to you. They don't take into account the market conditions, which markets you're covering. So it push all the way down to you. And every sales leader kind of looks at the top line metrics, right? Which is how many cold calls are you doing? How many cold emails are you doing? And I find myself sort of trying to have to follow those things. I feel like in Southeast Asia, for example, at least in our line of work, there's so many nuances. In every single country is different. You can't just tell me that, hey, the US is making X amount of cold calls and cold emails and they're hitting quota that way. I have to do the same. To me, I think that's not right.
Southeast Asia is really a very different market that operates very differently from US. Yeah.
It is, and you probably know as well, right? Even if I were to cold call Vietnam or Thailand today, the success rate compared to someone in US cold calling another one in US is much, much higher in the US as compared to here. So why are we trying to apply the same metrics and same things that we are doing here? Yet the metrics put on us or the requirements put on us is the same. For example, if the US does 100 cold calls a day, we are expected to do that. But we have so many limitations with language, with even the lack of data here. Like who is going to get me those data to cold call? Versus someone in US, data is almost free there, right? There's very little privacy regulations there. So that's debatable, but I would feel in terms of getting contact data, yeah, much easier there. And I started to feel a bit suffocating because I feel like, especially when you're trying to do certain things here in this part of the world, you need to take time, right? You can't just say, do exactly what the US does. And I feel like a lot of sales leaders did that during my time working, not just for my own companies, although I've had some good leaders, but I feel like everybody struggled with the same thing. Why are we being held to the same structure as US or UK or Europe, where it's quite different here? So I remember I was traveling a lot in that job as well. I was almost traveling at least every 3 weeks. I was flying to somewhere. And what I recall really clearly was I got married probably sometime last year in December. Yeah, in 7th of December, right? 4 weeks before my wedding, I remember I was flying to Philippines. Week after, I flew to Hong Kong. Week after, I flew to Malaysia. Took 1 week break. Got married. Straight away the week after I got married, I had to fly to Malaysia. So it became a point where I was saying, well, firstly, I didn't agree sometimes with the tactics and strategies from some leaders. At the same time, do I want to live my life just traveling and traveling and traveling? What if I wanted to have kids? Can I be available for them? So even back then, I had colleagues who had kids, and they were even traveling sometimes more than me or similar to me. So I really sort of extrapolated my life and think to myself, okay, 5 years later, do I still want to be doing this? And if I move to the enterprise level, covering even bigger accounts, is that something I actually enjoy? So it was probably that period where maybe some people call it slight quarter life crisis, right? Where you've been working for a few years, you start to think, is this the route that you want to go after? And I sort of knew back then, okay, I didn't want this life. What was my alternative? Do I change roles? What do I do? I definitely did try to change roles. In fact, I did look into customer success roles for a period as well, but unfortunately, I didn't manage to get that role, right? Which probably on hindsight, it was a good thing. And I recall, I started to tell my girlfriend, now wife, back then, I said, yeah, I think it's about time that I just give it a shot, try my own thing. Because again, I don't agree with sometimes strategy. I want to be in charge of strategy. I want to be someone that has control, right?
To have autonomy and freedom.
Yeah, that's probably what we are looking for. That, and at the same time, I don't want to keep traveling and have quota being renewed every single month, every single quarter. It can be very tiring, right? And you're constantly hunting new accounts. So I said, okay, it's about time. But the considerations back then, again, using a logical mind was, is it the right timing?
You just get married. How do you decide about right timing?
So the funny thing was, the initial part to me, when I think about it logically, was, do I have enough funds and savings? It was very clear. To start my own business, I needed 12 months of living expenses. So what helped was the fact that I'm someone that tracks my things on a month-to-month basis, right? So every single time, even taking cab, eating food, I'll put it into a money tracker. So I'm not too crazy, like I don't keep receipts and all of this, right? But I constantly have this, very proactively, I will put down how much I spend. At the same time, for any sort of utility bills or maybe pocket money that I give to my parents, I note it down in Notion. So I knew almost to a 90% confidence how much my monthly output was. How much do I need to sustain myself and have the same sort of quality of life? Which to me, it came out to be about 3,000 to 4,000. Considering now I also have a house, right? To pay off and everything. So I said, okay, 3,000 to 4,000, multiply that by 12 months. Do I have that amount? Okay, back then I had that amount. So finances, done. The next thing to think about, what was the right timing? Because I was, as you mentioned, I was getting married. In fact, initially I wanted to quit before I got married. But after discussions with my now wife, obviously that didn't happen, right? We said, okay, I'm going to be responsible. I'm not going to do that. And initially, the idea was, I told her, okay, I'm going to work at this job for a year. And then I'll quit. So the original timeline was, now it's year 2025, right? Original timeline was probably around August 2025, I'll quit. And all I could recall was after we got married, during honeymoon, I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about starting my own business. So during honeymoon, I started telling my wife, I said, can I quit maybe sometime in June, just to make it faster. And it became June and May, April. All I remember was the first day I went back to work in early January. I told myself, and I had to fly to Malaysia shortly after, during January as well. And I just told myself, okay, I really want to do my things now. Because there have been so many times when I was in a hotel room in Malaysia and I just keep thinking, I really don't like this. I want to do my own thing. And I knew that I could do my own thing, right? Because I saw how deals are being made and I saw how much people were willing to pay, not just in Southeast Asia, but even more in the US. And I said, yeah, if I want to get, let's say, 10K a month, all I need is 4 clients that pay me 2.5K SGD. Can I get there with time? Yeah, with time I believe I could get there. And that also means I don't have to keep going after new clients over and over again. So I remember coming back from Malaysia and I just told my wife, I said, okay, I've decided March I'm going to quit. So March I'm going to quit, meaning February I had to give my notice period.
Yes.
So shortly after, I remember I had a chat with my boss first. I always tell my hiring manager first, right? I said, hey, I'm looking to make a bold move. He said, Asher, think for a few days. You let me know if you really want to do it. Thought for a few days, started telling a few of my colleagues, yeah, same thing, same outcome. So that's what was when I told my boss. I said, yeah, I'm going to quit. And I still remember my boss telling me, right, I said, I think you're making a wrong decision. I think you shouldn't. I think you should work. There's opportunities from you here. And I feel in my life, a lot of people always tell me that, right? But I think they meant well. They have well intentions. But I feel sometimes it comes from also a place of fear. They have not done it before. And why am I listening to someone who has not done it before?
Right, it's like the quote that I read somewhere, don't take advice from someone who has not achieved the things you want.
Yeah, in a sense. And to me, what I wanted to achieve was not more money, right? To me, what I wanted to achieve was flexibility, control, freedom, which I just feel like as an employee was really hard for me to get to. Maybe possible, but it was just hard for me to get to. So I always kind of knew that I wanted to go into entrepreneurship, business owners. Again, during that period when I started moving out, right, that was when all these ideas came about.
I guess I've also spoken to some of your peers. One thing that holds them back is the fear of falling behind their peers. And during this time, you would notice many people start to upgrade their lifestyles. Like, oh, okay, suddenly like buy Rolex, play golf. It's the standard stuff, like drink nice wine, start to go to expensive restaurants. And there's this sense of pride of having made it in a sense. But it seems that you are not too affected by the progress of your peers. Is it because you are in a different path? Like, can you tell me more about how you overcame that?
I would say, to a certain extent, I definitely still struggle with that initially, right? Although I would say to me, it's not too much of an impact for me. One thing I was always very careful of was to keep my expenses low. Even when I started earning more money as an AE, SDR, even on months where I did well and got bigger commissions, I never really went out to spend extravagantly. I'm not interested so much in buying the new car. I'm not interested in wines, that's not my thing. I'm not interested in
Watch.
Not really my thing also. I think the only luxury watch I own is when my wife bought one for me because I buy her diamond ring and then she wanted to buy.
Okay.
So that was probably the only sort of luxury watch I own. Not even Rolex level. But again, I don't know why. Maybe it's also the way I grew up. We grew up with nothing much, right? These things never really interest me. So to me, at least on the mental side of things, it was easier for me to take that step. But as you mentioned, it's not just about the mental, right? Because if you do not carefully plan your life prior and you start to get yourself into certain financial commitments, such as a car, or maybe you decided, okay, I want to buy a condo, and the condo starts to take a lot of you in terms of mortgage, then even no matter how great you are mentally, physically, it's also really hard for you to take that step. For me, mentally, I was ready. Physically speaking, I had, as I mentioned, that 12 months of living expenses already there, and I had slightly more as well. I knew that what's the worst case that can happen? The worst case that can happen is 3 months down the road, I earned $0, zero profit. And I told my wife back then, I said, okay, if at the end of 3 months I earn $0, right, that means I'm lacking in certain skill sets, that means I'm lacking in certain areas, then I'll just go back to find a job. So that was the milestone. Okay, make sure don't earn $0. Second thing I told her was, okay, by the end of 6 months, I must have X amount per month. And I said, if I don't have at least this, and it was quite a low figure, obviously lower than what I earn monthly, right? But I told her, if I don't earn this X amount, then same thing, I'll quit. It just means that I'm not cut out for this. So I had plans in mind as well, right? I'm not someone that just crazily and say, okay, I'm just going to do this. But I really had planned in mind logically to say these are the milestones and we'll keep to it. And I would say right now, I'm probably about in my 4th month, and yeah, things are looking good. And I have a feeling I probably won't be going back to the corporate life anytime soon.
I guess your baseline isn't that difficult as well, because it's just basically going back to do customer success or being an AE, right? Which is not too bad.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. As much as I say things such as, I don't like corporate, things like that, but I would say my 5 years in doing sales in corporate actually really trained me to not be afraid of some things. For example, talking to a new client, pitching my services, trying to tell them the price with confidence. A lot of my friends as well who heard that I was doing my own things, 90% of them would always ask me the same question. Actually, how do you get your first 3 clients? To me, I never thought about that as an issue. Because I was in sales, right? I was always hunting and trying to find new clients. I was always closing new deals. My worry was never how do I get my first 3 clients. I knew I could get my first 3 clients. My worry was more around how do I deliver for them? How do I make sure that they are happy and they stay with me? That was more, and I would say that second part is actually easier. As long as you work hard, you show that the client that you are trying to do good work for them. Mistakes happen sometimes, but compared to getting a new client, I think a lot more people struggle with that.
I think we were having this conversation in one of the cafes, and you spoke about how time with children, time with parents is key for you. Maybe can you tell us a bit more?
I would say it may come from maybe my upbringing, maybe because Asians, right, you are always more collective in nature, and maybe also because I'll put it this way, I've seen people who can't spend much time with their kids. I've seen people who are always traveling and doing almost, they have no choice but to put work first, right, because of their financial commitments. And I know that for a lot of them, they probably don't enjoy their life as much. Again, this is just what I feel, right? And because I've personally experienced that, even before I was married, I didn't like the traveling. Even before I was married, I didn't like the fact that why am I working to fulfill your expectation, maybe like a manager's expectation, when it's crazy like the amount of deals you want me to close per month. I knew that I didn't enjoy that. So why would I continue doing that? To me, it was as straightforward as that. Some people could live that lifestyle, but also, I don't know, maybe you may have experienced that. I've also seen AEs who maybe have worked 15, 20 years, because they're traveling so much. Maybe their relationship with their wife is not that good. You've heard of infidelity, right? Where maybe you've heard of sales reps who maybe travel to other countries, and we like to joke and say that, yeah, they have girlfriend in every country they travel to. So that sort of things. And I asked myself, do I want that? Or rather, do I want to put myself in that situation? I'm pretty sure 90% of them didn't set out to cheat. If we are going down this road, right? I'm pretty sure 90% of them didn't set out to cheat, but maybe it could be the fact that they're away and their wife feel like they're neglected, and maybe emotionally they start to be separated. And maybe these people, let's say guys, right? Maybe they want to get comfort from other women. And from there, they start to, have girlfriends here and there. So I myself, I just didn't want to put myself in that situation. And again, could also be because I was Christian back then, right? Like when I was really young, a lot of my values, such as making sure that you are faithful and things, probably came from that as well. So even now, as I'm running my business, I try my best. And I would say I'm doing pretty well right now. Like Saturday, Sundays, I don't touch work. Like it's time with my wife to go out. Sure, sometimes I may ask for 1-2 hours, can I do my own thing? But right now, I still tell myself, Saturday, Sunday, don't touch work. Work can be done on the weekdays. So that's for me.
Yeah, I think we've all been in tech companies whereby you see how money can bring out the worst side of people, and how the pursuit of more and more have led them to neglect their families and even health as well, right? I realize there's a lot of people in the tech industry who drink, who smoke to deal with the stress, and I'm wondering if they are using their health to also pay for their job in a sense.
Yeah. So I definitely agree that some people pay with their health as well, right? Sometimes could be maybe the industry is just like that, especially I've heard in cybersecurity, you drink a lot, maybe your environment, your colleagues are like that. But for me, health was always something of, I would say, quite a priority. And it could be also because of my previous experiences in army, and even after army, I still try to train as much, right? I also had a period where after army, I sort of put on quite a bit of weight. And
How many kg?
So whatever my weight is now, I recall back then I was at least 10 kg more than I was now. Yeah. So there was a period like that, and I look back at those photos, right, and I told myself, I didn't really like how I looked back then. And this is nothing to do with, like fat shaming or what, right? It's just I knew that back then I didn't like how I looked. At the same time, I didn't feel healthy as well. So I said, okay, I wanted to change that. And after the experience, from there, I always try my best to keep a healthy lifestyle and all, right? And again, when you're flying around, traveling, sometimes it's just hard to do. So even now, I am busy on a day-to-day basis because of my own business. But I always try to at least put in 2 to 3 exercise sessions per week, right? Just to keep the body moving and active. And once things stabilize, I would think that I can give more time to it as well. Because at the end of the day, at least for now, I don't have dreams of building like billion-dollar business, like 100 million exit. That's not really what I want to go after, because I know the work it takes to get there. For me, if I can earn, let's throw a number out there, right? If I can get to 15,000, 20,000, but I work 30 hours a month, or I work 40 hours a month, yeah, I'm quite happy, and I don't have to travel. I can sort of do the work that I want. I'll be happy. Even at 10K right now, even for the next 2 to 3 years, if I can hit 10K, yeah, that's a happy lifestyle for me. So it was always quite clear, right? Stability. And I wanted to make sure that I have time to do what I want to do, when I want to do, and at the same time have autonomy and have sort of good work-life balance per se.
It's time with family, autonomy, and of course the baseline of stability as well. I feel you are downplaying your health part a bit, because actually you are one of the people who have influenced me to be more interested in my health as well. Because I saw that you were posting stories like every day you were doing something, either at the fitness corner or running. But you told me not every day, right? Only some days. Then after that, I saw you hire a PT, and then you were posting your progress as well. And then you did high rocks singles as well. So maybe you can tell me a bit more, because that seems to be the past 3 years plus. Like what was happening back then, and what got you more interested than you originally were?
So we'll move backwards, right? Why did I even sign up for PT? Because PT was probably the more recent one. I signed up for PT because I was getting married. Okay. I just wanted to look my best for my wedding. And also during the period when I signed up for PT, high rocks started to become more popular, right? And I said, okay, if I'm training so hard for my PT, and that period when I was working my PT, right, I was exercising at least 5 times a week. Yeah. So I definitely have some sessions, regardless of it running or going to the gym, including training sessions with him, at least 5 times a week. So I said, if I'm training so hard, why not I just go for high rocks just as an experience, right? So all of those things pretty much came together. But even before that, I'm a huge believer in accountability. Even back then when I was doing my podcast or community or whatever things that I'm doing, I find that a lot of people like to say things like, oh, I want to become healthier, oh, I want to exercise more. But a lot of people don't go through with it. Why? Because they don't have to be accountable to anyone. They just say, nobody is holding them to a certain standard. For me, what I always like to do is, maybe because I'm Asian, we are Asians, right? We don't want to disappoint people. So I always like to say this, if I have a certain goal, I will just tell as many people as possible. Even when I'm starting my business, I tell a lot of people, I will start my business before this date, before this date, before this date. I will quit my job before this. I just keep telling a lot of people, so I force myself to go through it. Same with fitness. That period when I decided, okay, I want to get my fitness in order, I want to start working out, that was what I tell people. That's why I will keep posting on Instagram to say, okay, this is my goal, work out at least 4 times a week. Each session must be at least 25 minutes. And I'll force myself to do that, right, by taking videos. So nobody is really forcing me to do it, but I know myself, I don't want to be paiseh. So I will purposely put it out there, and people will, in a sense, I feel like every one of my followers is my accountability buddy. They will hold me accountable. So that's how I look at things most of the time.
So setting like a deadline for yourself, like telling people by a certain date, and then there's also this other aspect of, you need to inform your friends so that they would keep you in check.
Yeah, honestly, most of them may not even care, right? Like you tell your friends so many things, I want to do that. Many of them don't care. But to me, I feel like I've been pretty committed to what I always say. Like I say that I will do X, Y, Z. My friends would know that the moment I say, if you can ask my wife, if I say I want to do something, and we've discussed it already, it's a low chance that she can convince me otherwise most of the time. So that's just me in general when it comes to fitness or anything else.
Okay. Actually, I just maybe wanted to take a step back, right? Because from the fitness part, I feel that that's really a very important aspect of life, and I'm glad we covered it during this session, because a lot of young people tend to feel that health is something that's very far away when it's actually very important. So on the same line of thought about long-term thinking, I'm just wondering, why now? Why leave a 6-figure salary kind of job now before you turn 30? Why not 3 years later, 5 years later? Why not when you're 40?
The part about why now, why not in the future, it was really the combination of all those experiences, right? Seeing people who may have been maybe not faithful in their relationship, I knew I didn't want to be there. Seeing people who may not have time for their kids, I don't want to be there. Seeing people who still had to travel monthly, weekly, I didn't want to be there. It was a lot of push factor. There's a pull factor, which is I want to run my own business. I believe I can do it. But the push factor was also all of these other things, right? And it was also a situation where I recall quite clearly when I started telling my colleagues and friends, I wanted to do this. I had some colleagues or friends who were older than me. And they came and tell me, and funny enough, it was these people who, just like me, they were individual contributors. They were also people who were not managers or things like that. Managers most of the time would say, actually, I don't know if this is the right choice. Maybe because they want to keep you in their team, right? But my colleagues who I work side by side, they're also individual contributors. They were the one that tell me, actually, I'm so proud of you. Actually, I'm so happy for you. Do you know I always wanted to do this also? Like when I was your age, I also wanted to do this, but I just didn't really do it. I'm not sure why. And that gave me validation, right? That there are so many people that actually wanted to do their own things, but they maybe just didn't have the motivation at the end of the day. They didn't have an action plan. They didn't have a lot of things in place. They just didn't go through with it. And for me, again, I knew that the time is now, right? What's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen, I go back and get a job. But I just didn't want to go through life not doing the things I want to, because I knew for a fact that if I didn't start my own business and I die 5 years later, I would regret it. But now, if I tried it and I go back to work, I probably would not regret it. So it was as simple as that, I would say.
Okay, so thinking of taking a long-term view and thinking about minimizing regrets, which I think Jeff Bezos also talked about when he was leaving his cushy finance job to start a company like Amazon. So perhaps maybe one last question, which I ask all my guests. Asher, what is happiness and what is success to you? Can you describe it?
as of now, to me, happiness is being able to do the things that I want to do and being able to spend time on the things I want to spend time on. And on top of that, earning a decent enough income to be able to sustain myself to do the first two things.
Okay, that's very nice to hear. I think it sums up the entire conversation, the themes we spoke about. Autonomy, doing the things you want to do. Family, spending time with the people you want to spend time with.
Yes.
And then, of course, that baseline of stability, which in your case, you don't feel you need like humongous amount of.
Yeah, so definitely correct. And I would say also, maybe one last thing I would say, right? I think it's also really important to get the right partner. Yeah, I have to say, at least for my wife, she was the one that was the logical brain, right? When I wanted to quit before our wedding, she also kind of talked me into it and say, hey, are you sure? Maybe it's better. And she's right. And the moment when I said I wanted to do my own thing, she was fully supportive as well, right? So I think that's also really important. Someone who actually believes in your vision, your mission, and what you want to do, and supports you in majority of the ways that you want, emotionally, physically, or maybe mentally. Yeah, so that's one thing I would also say as well.
She's like a voice of reason, and your like partner supporting you as you go through this entire process as well.
Yes, that's correct. So yeah, important.
Yay, thank you to Asher's wife.
Yes.
All right, so yeah, thank you so much, Asher, for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me as well. And yeah, love being over here.
Bye-bye.
Right, thank you. Bye.